Hello everybody, Corvus here. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you for joining me today. And for anybody that's new, I'm Corvus, and I basically upload videos on either whatever I feel like at the moment, or whatever you guys request. So this is Understanding Eating Disorders Part 2. I will link the first part in the description below. But like I had said at the end of that very long video, I could go on and on about eating disorders because there are so many, and most people don't even realize how many different eating disorders there are, because mainly the media focuses on anorexia and on bulimia. So at this point, I want to put out a trigger warning that I'm going to be talking about eating disorders and things relating to eating disorders. So if you think you may be triggered by any sort of thing there, please just click away from the video now. And one thing that I also wanted to just put out there is that even if you get a diagnosis of anorexia, say, and none of us really fit into a perfect little box. Everybody seems to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's very hard to really just put somebody in a, just diagnose them with one. That's how it's done, of course. But, for example, I have anorexia nervosa, but I do engage, or have engaged, in purging type behaviors. But I don't have a purging subtype. So I wanted to talk about, though, today, binge eating disorder, because this is something that it really bothers me. It was only put in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is sort of like an encyclopedia of mental illnesses. It was only added to the DSM in 2013. So prior to that, cracked my finger unexpectedly. Prior to that, you could not get your insurance to cover therapy or medication or anything that could help you with your binge eating disorder, because it wasn't considered a disorder yet. And it actually is the most common eating disorder in the United States of America, and it's just as severe and life-threatening as any other eating disorder is. Basically, what binge eating disorder means is, I'll read what the definition says. Frequently consuming unusually large amounts of food in one sitting, and this is the point, feeling that behavior is out of control. So you have these recurrent episodes of eating large quantities of food. And when it comes to large quantities of food, it's more than a meal in one sitting, very often, sometimes very quickly, to the point where the person may be actually uncomfortable because they've eaten so much at one point. But one of the things that's major about this is the feeling of the loss of control, that you are not in control of yourself when this is going on. And experiencing shame, guilt, just feeling really terrible about yourself and beating yourself up over it. And one other thing that I do want to mention also is people with binge eating disorder do not end up engaging in the negative behaviors of purging after they binge. That's one thing that's sort of one of the big things that sets it apart from that. And depending on what you're talking about, the word binge can have a lot of different meanings, because I know some doctors will consider a binge a certain number of calories or more in a sitting, but I know that more and more doctors now are looking at binge eating as when the person eats a larger amount of food than they normally would, and they feel guilt and shame about it, they feel bad about it. But an episode of binge eating is usually characterized by you eat in a discrete period of time, within a 1 hour period or a 2 hour period. And it would definitely be larger than what you would normally be eating. And like I said, there's a complete lack of control. that people will feel while they're in these episodes. It can be also a problem because a lot of people with binge eating disorder will eat much faster than a person that does not have it. And that can cause GI problems, and obviously there are huge health side effects. There can be things like type 2 diabetes you can become morbidly obese, and it is treatable. This is a treatable illness. And with binge eating, to describe it as a binge eating disorder, it has to be about, I think it's once a week for 3 months. And then at that point, if you've been doing it once a week for 3 months consecutively, you would be able to get that diagnosis. And it pisses me off that for some reason our culture or the media or whatever tends to focus on anorexia and bulimia and completely leaves out that there's this other eating disorder out there that is the one that is most prevalent in the United States. And nobody really talks about it because of all the fat shaming that goes on in the world and in our, specifically more in the Western cultures. But it's just as severe and life-threatening because if you're having, like, say, a binge episode and you're out of control, say you go through a drive-thru and you order a lot of food because there's a lot of guilt and shame around the food, you decide to park in the parking lot and you eat all of your food in the car without getting out so nobody sees you, so you're not around anybody when this binge happens, and you can throw away the refuse and be done with it. It's like that. I think about the emotional turmoil with that, and I can totally see how it would be just on par with any other eating disorder. And I think about that a lot of people do that with the fast food and will eat usually junk foods. It's not like usually people with binge eating disorder are binging on salads. So a lot of people with binge eating disorder end up malnourished and need, having vitamin deficiencies. And like I said, it's life-threatening, just as life-threatening as, say, bulimia nervosa or anorexia nervosa. So that was sort of what I wanted to talk about today, because it just really sort of upsets me that there just isn't any information really out there about binge eating. And a person, this is another thing that I would like to add, a person can have anorexia and binge eating disorder, but they cannot be occurring at the same time. You can have binge eating disorder and be binging and going through the processes that I was just talking about, and then you could start starving yourself, cutting back calories, fasting, all sorts of stuff, and could get the diagnosis of anorexia nervosa, but be, say, I guess, either in remission or recovered from the other disorder. But a person can end up on all ends of this spectrum of eating disorders. And because I know that I have actually had friends that were diagnosed with both, that would get, people would say to them, like, how is that possible? And of course, a very much more negative, mean way. And it's possible. You could have bulimia nervosa and engage in the binging and purging, and then stop the purging and just binge for a while. It's very, very simple to understand how you can have both at the same time, but you can't be showing symptoms at the same time. Really hope that made sense, because I feel like it didn't. I didn't want to make this too long, so I am going to say goodbye for now. But my next video on understanding eating disorders, part 3, is going to be on OSFED, or EDNOS, which is otherwise specified feeding or eating disorder, and EDNOS is eating disorder not otherwise specified. So I wanted to make sure that I had a whole video for each disorder, because they're all sort of complex and have little nuances that I would like to talk about. And I know most of you don't want to have to sit through 20 minutes of me rambling. Um, so, if you either like this video or like that, somebody is trying to shine some light on other eating disorders, please give this video a like. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on so whenever I do post a video, you'll know about it right away. And thanks for watching. Love all you guys. Corvus.